They say you have 3 seconds to capture someone's attention. So pay attention. In August of last year, 2025, I had the honor of doing an interview, conversation, podcast, whatever you want to call it, with the incredible Kevin Scott. I assume everyone checking this out knows who Kevin Scott is. Currently bass player for Gov't, Mule, Warren Haynes band, long time association with people like Wayne Krantz and Jimmy Herring, Fork, Colonel Bruce Hampton. It's an amazing conversation. We talked for almost 2 hours. I do encourage you to get some food and a pen and paper. Don't be afraid to pause that, take some breaks, but there is an incredible amount of insight that Kevin shares. We talk about Tommy Cogbill. We talk about Gordon Edwards of Stuff and 66 P basses. We talk about the dangers of social media, comparisons, ego. It's really deep. We talk about learning a lot of music, stylistic understanding. I just rewatched it. I'm sorry it's taken me so long to put this video out, but I'm so glad to share this with you. Kevin, thank you. I really think you guys are going to dig this, and looking forward to doing more of these. Kevin, thanks again. You're a great friend and inspiration, and thanks for sharing so much wisdom and just being honest with us. All right, see you on the other side. All right, Kevin, thanks again for being here, man. This is just awesome. And right off the bat, you recently, or it came to my attention that you got a 66 P bass, and I got my red 66 back there. I gotta ask you about it, man, because just tell me how did this thing come into your life?
Well, I've 66 has always been my favorite year. And I think a lot of people don't know that's really the Jamerson year.
Yeah,
A lot of people think it's
like a 62 or something, right?
but his main bass was stolen, I think in '65 or '66, so they had to give him a new bass, and so that Sunburst is supposedly a '66.
Yeah,
And I think of all the years, that's the most consistent year I've ever played of a vintage P. Besides late '50s, like my buddy Austin White has this unbelievable '58 that actually has the rosewood fingerboard,
whoa,
which
okay,
is
cool.
super rare. But that thing, played incredible. But I've always had reserves about, first like just how expensive they are now. Um, you'll see a good, a good shape 66 going for what 7 to 10 now. So that's definitely not in the family budget for. As you can see,
Working
I
bass player.
have plenty of bases back here, and
Yeah.
I told my wife that I was gonna, spend 10 grand on a bass. She wouldn't get mad, but it'd be like, why? So upon arriving in Nashville, everybody's been very. Because I moved here in March from New York or from Brooklyn technically, but everybody has been so supportive, and I met a lot of amazing bass players immediately that we were talking via Instagram, or they're reaching out, or I was reaching out to them, and there's this amazing bass player named Tom that um, he hit me up about getting lessons, and because I teach, and he came by the house and we had a great time, and he's a you know pocket just old school tone cat, and we're talking about all his vintage basses and his Mulans, and he's got a lot of great stuff, and he basically was like, I want to. He surprised me with delivering the '66 Sunburst that is just on permanent loan,
Wow.
which I was completely amazed. I mean, it's the dream. It's like exactly what I've always essentially wanted. I mean, it's like
Dude, look
it's
at
got
that.
these cool cigarette burns up here. Um, I mean, the amazing shape. I mean, the neck is
Yeah.
perfect. But what's fucked up about, as you know, about these old vintage P's, if we're into that kind of stuff, it's like, man, I just can't stop playing it. I mean, it's.
Exactly.
And the Mulans are incredible. And I have literally a 66 copy, the Sunburst I got them to make me a few years ago. Um, I mean, but it's just hard to not to play the 66 and everything. But Tom has been really amazing. He's in a great band with all these old school session and touring guys called Big Shoes, um, and a bunch of guys like Bonnie Raitt's band, and a bunch
Wow.
of guys who live in Nashville that are older that are no longer hitting hard, and they have this really sick kind of blues rock fusion thing they're doing. But Tom has another 66. He's got a few other early 60s basses. So
That's incredible, dude.
yeah, it's been a trip, and I had the few days prior, a few days after he gave me the bass, he was like, "Now you're taking that with you." I was like, "All right." He's like, "It's yours." So I was like, "All right." So I've been flying with it, which is pretty nerve wracking, but it needs to get played. You know.
Absolutely, man. That's how I feel about the red bass. And it's like I don't want to say nothing else compares, but everything that red bass is like the standard. And then, maybe there's like a rough seedy bar and I don't necessarily want to play it there, but I take another bass and I'm kind of like, I wish I had my red bass. It
It's
just makes
wild. I mean, because this was my main. I got this is a '73 that I got
yeah.
in high school for $300 or $400 or something, and it was brand new when I got it. So all this shit, is all my doing, and
Yeah.
this thing's never been set up. It's never been cleaned. And now the strings they're like 12 years old now. And this thing is absolutely amazing. But the neck profile, I was so used to the 70, early 70s neck profile, which is a little skinnier. So it's like in between a J and a P. Um, that, like in the first Mulan I got made, that 57 clone actually had the radius of that neck on it. So it
Cool.
wasn't a true 50s. But, now, it's just, that neck is just, on a 66, is just too perfect. It's like, but my theory is that eventually the Mulans will sound, or not sound, but play like that when they're old.
They're just
Because,
going to keep wearing in.
yeah, because I think the way, you know, young June, he's such a brilliant guy. It's like, I think once these basses get to the age that is, then they'll be extremely similar. Because, have you ever played a collector's mint condition P?
I have played a few that are like almost untouched, which is kind of interesting. I almost have a
What do you
theory.
think?
Go ahead.
What
Well,
do you think?
I think sometimes the ones that are played in have been played in for a reason, right? And then
Yeah.
the one that's like untouched or unmolested, it's like maybe this one just didn't have it. It is such a hard to define thing, but sometimes you just pick up an instrument. I swear, sometimes I can just put my hand on a neck and be like, "Whoa, well, there's something about this." As
Yeah,
out there as that
we've
sounds.
talked about that before. I mean, that's how. I mean, people can overthink it. And when I go to Carter's Music here in Nashville, which I haven't been since I've moved, but I'll go to these vintage shops and I'll pick up a P, and
Yeah,
you can just kind of tell I even plug it in. I mean, this one is so lightweight. I mean, this is definitely my dream bass for sure. But I'm also pretty horrified at the market, um, and just I have played more clunker 64s than I have 66s. I mean, I've never played a 66 I didn't like.
yeah.
I've played all sorts of different ones. And there was one at Carter's a few years ago, but it was stuck in the acoustic room for some reason. I don't know why. But it was a refin. They stripped the finish, but it was only like $3,500. And it was amazing. But still, I didn't have the bread to pull the trigger on that.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I definitely. I'm not saying I'm not a fan of 62 64s. I just think that they're not as consistent as I think 66 is the magical year. So I'm sure
That's
some people
awesome,
would
man.
argue with that, but
Well, hey, congrats, man. And more for us, I suppose.
that's what I'm saying.
All right, man. I got a bunch of questions I want to ask you. But so I don't even know what today's date is, but mid-August, and last week you got to meet the man, the myth, the legend in person, Chuck Rainey. And I mean, you and I both love Chuck, and I know he's a huge influence on yours. And so, what was it like to meet him? And I mean, you got to sit down and have a conversation and maybe a little food with him or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Chuck. I mean, everybody has their kind of. I hope everybody has multiple people in their DNA of the masters. I mean, because you got to think about it, like the electric bass is still very young
Mm-hmm.
instrument. So I mean, just for the fact that we have these guys that are still alive, that were essentially the it'd be the same
Pioneers.
thing if yeah, they're still around. They some of them, like George Porter still plays once a week. It's like it's mind blowing because that'd be like the equivalent of like a violinist sing Paganini. It's like the same, and we're lucky. One of the only things lucky about being a bass player is we get to see these old guys that essentially are the true masters either play or talk to them, and there's Anthony, Chuck, and George. Anthony Jackson, George Porter, and Chuck Rainey, and um, Rocco, and those. I mean, I would probably say of the older cats, that really influenced me for years, which eventually led me into Tommy Cogbills and all that kind of stuff. But Chuck and Anthony, are the guys I definitely steal the most shit from, for sure. And I heard, when I first moved here, Chris Giese, basically the godfather of all printed bass,
Yeah.
was the editor from Bass Player that did everything, and he was like, you gotta get this guy Rod Taylor when you're down there. You and Robert would hit it off because Rod is also into psychiatry and Jung and all the stuff. So me and Rod had lunch when I first moved here at this amazing Indian joint, and Rod's an amazing bass player, an amazing guy. We really hit it off, and so Rod's like, "Hey man, Chuck's coming in town. You're gonna be around." And I lucked out. I was not on the road, and Chuck was doing a clinic slash speech type thing at the African American museum down here on Broadway, and it was great because the whole museum's about the influence and culture of black art and music. So Chuck was a debut candidate to come talk at this thing, and
Amazing.
so I did my video to help promote it because it's like literally like God himself is coming into town, and so I bought tickets for even some friends and just to support, and it was Victor Wooten and Tommy Sims, Rod, and Chuck, and
Wow.
they were all kind of going over stuff, and Chuck would talk. It was just a great night, bunch of bass players, and but basically like Rod was like, man, you want to have lunch with Chuck, So because I was talking to Rod, I was like, man, I wish there was a way I could just get some one-on-one time with him, like a few weeks prior. And he goes, basically, he was telling about me, and Chuck was like, oh, that's the guy with the beard. So it was
Nice.
really cool. So, so I was, went to the same Indian restaurant. I think it was 615 Chutney, and it's kind of further out of town. But yeah, it was just me, Rod, and Chuck for hours, and I got to spend quality time with him. It was incredible.
I should just chime in real quick for people listening or watching this. Kevin and I are throwing some names out there of like, for us, the people that wrote the book. And so if you're not familiar with Chuck Rainey, no shame, but you need to change that because you definitely have heard him on a lot of records. And this would be like having lunch with Wayne Gretzky or something like that, or just
Yeah,
it's a pretty
Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan, like a huge honor. And I got to meet Chuck very briefly, like a decade ago, at Gerald Beasley's bass boot camp. And everybody was like lining up to take pictures and stuff, and I said, "I'm not going to be the guy that has to take a picture." And which sometimes I'm like, I should have got my picture with Chuck, but I just
No, I
walked up and
understand that.
I shook his hand and I looked him in the eye and I didn't even know what to say. It was like a bit of a Chris Farley moment, and I was like, Mr. Rainey, thank you like for your musical contributions. And I think that's all I could muster up. And I mean, it's like you just look at the guy and you feel good. He's just a nice, really just like kind person, you know.
I mean, it's just and definitely he has an autobiography out um, that you should definitely check out.
Yeah.
It's called Joy and Precious Moments, I think.
Okay.
Um, but I've read it and it's absolutely incredible. I mean, it's him pulling him pulling no punches. I mean, and hearing his story is very relatable to people that aren't in positions of like, um, because I mean, again, like, I'm sure you can relate to this too. We've talked about it. It's like, when you don't have a real safety net doing this shit, you kind of wander to the abyss sometimes of like, man, like, what am I gonna do? And you see other people doing stuff that might have had a little, more privilege in that department. But it's always inspiring to read stories about people we can relate to that kind of crawl out of nothing. And hearing Chuck's stories, especially in the '60s and throughout his career of his ups and downs, and him being so honest, I think is the most inspiring thing about the book. Besides just the just insane detailed list of everything he did, and it's very well written, very well um, positioned out with chapters and different sections of like his different eras and then people he's worked with and some really cool pictures. But um, definitely a
Awesome.
very inspiring book. Even if you're not a bass player, I'd recommend it.
Yeah, I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah,
Um, all right, you mentioned Tommy Cogbill, and we got to
yeah,
talk about Tommy for a second because I mean, it's like the deeper I get into the music, the more Tommy kind of rises to the top of the list for me. Not that there really is a number one, but it's like, man, that guy, it's crazy. That's the best thing I can say is like his musical sensibilities on guitar and bass, his feel. Um, so yeah, I'm just curious, like anything you want to share about Tommy Cogbill I'd love to hear.
well, I make all these playlists on Spotify, and I've been converting them other platforms because obviously Spotify is the worst thing ever.
Yep.
Um, but it's a hobby of mine on the road where I'll nerd out and have some shit to do if I'm just sitting around for 10 hours for it to play. And it's funny. It's same thing with Chuck, and same thing with all the session guys that were listening from Jamerson. I mean, um, Duck Dunn.
Jerry Jamot.
Yeah, Jerry. I didn't. It's funny. Jerry's absolutely incredible, but I don't think I didn't hear as much of his stuff growing up. Besides, like the King Curtis stuff he was on, just because I was lucky enough my uncle was a sax player.
Yeah.
But in terms of just pop music, it's like just radio stuff. It's you've heard Tommy Cogbill probably 100 times by the time you're 10 years old.
Yeah.
You don't even know it. And then for years there's a lot of again in the session world, people don't get the right credit. Some people get credit for what other people do. And eventually, as you would agree, telling your students, I'm sure, is you have to be a historian first. If you're gonna, it's like if you really want to get good at something, you got to really know the history.
Mm,
Um,
I like
and then, I didn't really know much about Tommy until a decade ago. Really, I knew of his name, and then I started researching. I was like, wow, I thought this was this guy, but it's him.
mm.
And then eventually it led in the entire like American music post stack scene, and it's just been blowing my mind. Um, you know, because it's everybody comes from the Jamerson school because he was the first kind of like, well, what's that guy doing? And I think that all these guys kind of interpretation of what he was doing. We just mentioned primarily Chuck, Anthony, and Tommy. They really did their own thing with it.
Yeah.
But you can still hear what that is. It's a very interesting uh, situation. I mean, just in general for bass players, if you think about it, because we're expanding upon just a few guys still. If you think about it.
I completely agree. I think Tommy, man, had a way of improvising within the groove, if that makes sense,
Absolutely.
over like two chords sometimes. And it was like almost endless variations that were all like rhythmically right where they should be, syncopated in the pocket. And yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys that's hard to duplicate, or you can like,
Yeah.
you can learn some of his lines, but even I'm trying to think of a song off the top of my head, but it's like it's just endless variations, kind of like
I
the
mean,
Jamerson thing.
it's like I think that Tommy in particular, like you're talking about these variations he was improvising, 'cause he was a jazz guitar player
Yep.
that ended up playing bass, but it's I think the one thing I can really relate to him on is the fact that it's a diversity of the things he was playing. And that's why same thing with Chuck, same thing with Anthony, but with Tommy, it's like a lot of the stuff he did when you listen to like some of these Benny King records and um what's the guy that did anyway, his playing on straight ballads like R&B soul ballads was just so fantastic.
Yeah.
And then he would cut into like the J.J. Cale stuff, which is kind of country-esque, but it's still really funky.
Yep.
Yeah, but Tommy is definitely he's on Mount Rushmore for sure, in my opinion. But
Hey, I'm gonna take a left turn here because it's something I think about a lot. And I'm gonna try and put this into words. How do you feel about okay, like let's say you're going for a Tommy Cogbill thing or a Jamerson or whatever, or Willie Weeks or all these great guys. My thing is there's sort of like a fire and water balance between the drums and the bass. And I think a lot of those guys like Tommy could do his thing because the session drummers were like keeping it a little more simple or like a repetitive pattern. And I think I'll give a good example with like the Jay Dilla thing that everybody tries to do now. What people don't get is like someone's got to be kind of solid so the other person can lay back a little bit. For example, so it's like if a drummer's overplaying, then we can't quite do the Tommy Cogbill variations. I don't know if this is making sense, but I'm curious, like in your experience, is that something you ever like talk about with a drummer ahead of time, or or like whether it's a studio session or in a band, or there's just certain drummers where like they're going to be a little bit more meat and potatoes, and I'm going to play the Pete's and carrots and gravy. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say right now?
yeah, 100%. It's always a that's one. I think a lot of it has to do with the era too. I mean, unfortunately now, a lot of producers just they don't really want bass.
Mm.
They want bass, but they don't. Um, and it's like it's like you listen to even some modern, like some of the stuff with Pino doing the Miley stuff or whatever. You can tell that there's been editing. And I think a lot of it has to do with the time period where it was like that was the format for people making money. I mean, the higher ups was like, okay, we got drums doing this, and then a bass high in the mix, doing a lot of stuff. And
Yeah, that's
you
interesting.
know, that's what I think. I mean, the like for instance, you know, the sessions I've been on that were loose, there was communication, but like certain sessions where it's just, you just show up and it's just everybody's trying to get out of it as soon as they can. There isn't, I mean, there's nothing that can really be said. I mean, suggestions happen, but it's not as as more activity as it would be just kind of like a different kind of session.
I think that there's
You know, it's I don't I again, luckily, the drummers I've worked with for the last however long kind of already understand that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, sometimes there's situations where, you know, if they would just play something a little bit more repetitive, that means I can do more cool stuff.
Yep.
But if that's not the case, it's not the case. It's
Yeah.
like you're 100% correct.
I mean, that's what it means to be a good listener, an active listener in a live setting with the band.
Well, it's also just not having any kind of like. There's so much information out there now, and it's like, and there's so much amazing music to be influenced by that I think sometimes like you can't go into every session with the I'm gonna be like Tommy today.
Yeah.
I did a session a few weeks ago that was my first kind of Nashville session where it's like show up. You know, I brought three basses with me, and I brought my preamps, and you show up and they put the numbers in front of you, and boom, it's like you're trying to hit three songs in an hour. You
Yeah.
know, on that kind of stuff. That's the first time I've done something of that kind of nature, and a lot of it's just the first take. You know, I mean, it has to be. And the one thing goes back to Chuck in particular, which I loved, is he had a calling card. Whenever you heard that double stop,
Yep.
you knew it was him.
Thank you, Chuck Rainey. Yeah,
But
truly. Yeah.
because again, like like a commercial session like I did of this nature, you know, if you don't do something like that, it's just you can't tell essentially who it is
Dude,
after
I
someone's
got
said
to
it.
look up this record real quick, and it's probably already on your radar. My buddy hit me to this, and the reason I wish I knew what it was off the top of my head. Just a second. Man, it's like a gospel record from the '70s. It's like a preacher in Chicago, and the bass player is killing it, and he's doing a lot of Chuck Rainey stuff, and it's not Chuck Rainey, but it's like this guy was clearly hearing Chuck's double stops and kind of doing his own spin on it, but it is incredible, man. Bear with me for a moment here. I want to find this, and I'll send it to you also, but I'd love to tell some folks about it. Hang tight, we're getting there. It's the biggest. Oh yeah, okay. Do Not Pass Me By, Volume 2, Pastor T.L. Barnett and the Youth for Christ Choir. Does that mean anything to you? Have you heard this before?
I have not, but
Do Not Pass Me By, and you guys can check out this song called I Shall Wear a Crown. Ridiculous. That one, the guy's not really doing a lot of Chuck Rainey stuff, but it's kind of like on the ballads and stuff. And there's a Volume 1 that's great, and I got to thank my buddy Brooks Long because he hit me to it. He's like, dude, this is some of the funkiest shit you're ever going to hear. So it's hard to find info on it. I can't confirm who the player is, but
send me,
yeah.
send it to me. I mean, it's an endless, insane. Like, there's so much music from back then that they didn't list anybody.
I know. And
And
this
then,
guy's killing it. It's like he must have been the guy in Chicago. Like he's playing his butt off,
huh?
but I like that you said the calling cards because he's not necessarily doing like boo doo dee doo, like he's not necessarily doing that Chuck Rainey thing, but there's lots of hitting like a 7 and a 9 over like a open string and doing some tritone stuff and just kind of running with it. And let's see what the year is on this if it says.
Yeah, it just there was always, I think that's what the crazy distinct thing is. It's like, you kind of because of that, there's all sorts of things that, I would, well, because I lived in New Orleans, I was doing a lot of session work because we lived in a recording studio,
Yeah.
and I was eventually like, okay, well, how could I get a calling card and figure stuff out? So, but these in these very fast commercial settings, it's like, what can you do? You know, with who's the bass player, Rowe, with Johnny Cash, Dave Rowe.
Yeah, oh, yeah. He passed away not too long ago. Yeah,
You know, Dave's signature thing was just these slides he would do.
gotcha.
Ooh, like that was his thing.
Yeah,
So no, it's just an interesting. It's such an interesting instrument. You know, you know, it's not. I mean, you know, Willie Weeks had his thing. It's, you know, Anthony had his. Every time you heard four on the floor, and then some kind of like pentatonic run, that was Anthony.
yeah.
It's like all sorts of cool stuff.
Amazing, man. All right, dude. I'm going to get to the. This has been great. I'm loving this. I got my kind of set questions here. You could say
Yeah.
pass on some of these. Or just this first question is, what are 3 songs that made a lasting impact on you? I'm not asking what you think the 3 greatest songs are. It's just at times in your life. And I'll give you one example. Like, I remember you saying that you heard Green Onions as a kid from The Sandlot. And, like, just the feeling of that song, you're like,
That's on there.
yeah, that's awesome.
That was definitely one.
Anything else come to mind for you?
I mean, you talking about just growing up. I mean, the other song was the Stevie Wonder, Fulfilling His First Finale. Um, Heaven is a Thousand Light Years Away, right? I think that's the name of it. But yeah, my mom, her favorite musician was Stevie, so that particular song really hit me when I was a kid.
That's awesome.
And then, you know, man, as a modern impactful thing, I guess we could maybe say something just there's so many. I'm not gonna. I'll give you a list of 100, but
Yeah.
uh, I think the first time I heard, you know, Wayne Krantz, when I was in my early 20s, was a bootleg with Wayne, Anthony, Jackson, and I think it was Cliff Allman. That was pretty mind blowing. Um, I mean, Hendrix too. I don't know. I mean, I think I don't know. There's so many, but those are
I love that. That's great.
hearing. I think the first Wayne song I ever heard was "Why," and I remember just going, "What? This is like everything I've ever wanted to dream out of a trio." You know, that was a big one.
I haven't thought about this in a while, or I mean, actually, I think about it all the time. But it's like I feel like a sort of defining moment for me was hearing, like, being maybe 18 years old and hearing Schofield's Uber Jam.
Yeah,
And like that first song on there, I guess it's maybe Acid Head, but there's like sitar and all this stuff. And, you know, I didn't know it was Jesse Murphy at the time, but there's a couple songs on that album that were just kind of like, at that point in my life, sort of like, oh, this is like a lot different than String Cheese Incident and Fish.
I mean, it was. I mean, you know, first time I heard Bruce Hampton was another huge one. I mean, which was the late Bronze Age record. And then I heard ARU. That was another. I mean, it's like the same month I heard both of that. But and you know, Primus was huge when I was a kid. I mean, when I was fucking 12, I heard Wes Claypool. That was mind blowing.
And you were playing bass back then, or you don't have to give me your whole history, but how old were you when you started playing?
I started playing when I was 10,
Yeah,
and then I figured out to tighten up in Green Onions and said I've already mastered the instrument, so I'm
of
going back to
course.
basketball.
What else is there? You got Green Onions and Tighten Up. That's it.
You know, so then I started really practicing and shit when I was 12. Like
Yeah.
the bug really hit me then. Um, Third generation musician. My stepdad was an amazing musician as well, and I had an amazing band directors growing up. I mean, I had Larry Smith in middle school that, you know, took me under his wing. He was a bass player, and you know, the first time I heard prog rock and like Victor Wooten, and I was like in 6th grade, you know, and that
Yeah.
was whoa, holy shit.
That's awesome.
But then, you know, I've had a lot of great moments with metal. You know, like I'm such a I love extreme metal. And like the first time like I fucking heard Bulgars play a Power Pantera, it was like in seventh grade. That was, oh my God, what is this? And and Metallica was the first band I ever bought all their CDs. Um, Slayer was like that, and then Meshuggah, all the sweetest death metal. When I heard that in high school, was mind blowing. Mr. Bungle was the same kind of deal. I don't have a whole list, but the Greyhounds was like an adult. When I first heard them with Shrube and Farrell, that stuff blew my mind. I mean, I first heard them in my mid-20s. Um, and Ryan Klattner, what he's doing with black metal, he's my best buddy now. But
Oh yeah, he's great. I know who that he is for sure. Yeah.
when I first heard what he was doing, it was extremely inspiring in that genre. Because one of the problems with metal is that it's like any genre, I guess, but in that genre, the shit that's really amazing is phenomenal, but then everything else just falls into the category of like mediocrity is terrible,
Mm.
you know. But when I first heard what Klattner was doing with black metal, it just blew my mind. And then he showed me some stuff, and there's this guy, Nocturnal Triumph, which it's extreme black metal, but it's just very well written. I mean, there's so much different stuff, and you take the Knee Bodies when I first heard that, or Happy Apple.
Yeah.
Living in Atlanta, it was having access to all that amazing kind of modern R&B, hearing that stuff, and I don't know, it's just different phases. But those Green Onions was the first breakthrough I ever had.
That's so cool.
Hearing, I mean, my parents also blasted Steely Dan, so like hearing the Royal Scam every day going to school, which then was Chuck,
Yeah.
and then hearing the All Vegas solo record since I was born. That's Chuck, Anthony,
Oh,
Marcus
dude,
Miller, and
Marcus,
it's like,
Abe, and Will Lee's on Walk Between the Raindrops.
yeah,
That's like once again, Kevin's thrown a lot of great stuff out there. If you don't know Donald Fagen's The Nightfly, that is a like bass player must. I mean, that's just a great album, period. But it's Abe Laboriel, Chuck Rainey, Anthony Jackson, Marcus Miller, who plays on the bulk of it, and then Will Lee, and it's
yep.
it's fantastic. It's like a bass Bible.
It's pretty wild. I mean, it's funny though. That's the weirdest Chuck Rainey tone he's ever got. And I was, I don't know if he was happy about that tone or not, but it's interesting to hear. It's almost, you can't even recognize him on that recording because it's so.
What's that? Is that Green Flower Street? Is that the track?
I think so.
I think so. Yeah.
And the playing is there, but the sound was definitely not. Yeah.
Kevin, I want to ask you, what's your approach to learning a song? It could be for a session, or there's kind of a bunch of follow-ups to this, because I want to. This is a multi-headed question. Time management when you're doing multiple gigs, which obviously you do. I mean, we've talked where you're on the road with one band, in the hotel on the breaks, shedding music for another tour that's coming up. How are you? Not that you have to answer everything, but it's like, how are you managing your time? Or, okay, let me give you a clear question. If there's lots of time, what's your approach to learning a song? And then versus like, what's your 24-hour approach to learning something?
That's a great question. I mean, it varies. I think it varies from. It's easier with more experience you have messing up. Really, I mean, I think having a strong ear is very important. Trusting yourself. Having a long, it's funny. I work better on clutch time periods. Like if someone says, "We're doing this gig in 3 months. Here's a set list," I'm gonna wait to the last minute because that's what I'm used to. I recommend it, but to me, it's like for instance, I'm doing a gig this Thursday with an amazing R&B soul singer. and she set the tunes maybe 2 weeks ago, and then some charts. So it's really like she is giving me so much information that I can listen to the playlist. Like the gig's Thursday, so I had a bunch of work last week. So my goal was like, okay, on my calendar is our meeting, and after that, get a haircut and then work on her stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think that one of the big things is not. I don't really like to rely on charts, um, because I don't. It's like most situations I'm in. Now, if I was in a sitting down situation, like I played a gig recently with this great guitar player from New York City named Ricardo. That he's an amazing modern jazz player that I used to work with in New York. But he booked a gig down at Rudy's here in Nashville with some New York cats that live here now, Marlon and John. Um, but he has great charts. I played material for, so I could do less work because, again, if I'm at a jazz gig, I'm going to sit and I'll have music stand and I'm being interactive during the blowing sections. Um, but for this gig coming up, it's like with playing R&B or soul, I'm not going to have charts on stage. It's just too distracting. Um, but one thing I like to do with learning a song is, some people say, let's do it first. Determining on the time crunch thing, like if I have 24 hours to learn 30 songs, like I have my bass and I'm learning it
Real
before I
time.
learn it in real
Yeah.
time. And I'm making some really scratchy notes if something comes to my head. Because a lot of the times, you know, unless you're playing like now, if you're having to learn specific parts in 24 hours, it's way more insane and harder. I mean, it's like, but luckily, a lot of times, you kind of pick your battles with that. With a lot of music, I do. It's like, okay, well, this is a part that's distinct. I'm gonna learn it, and then move on to just to plan through the changes for this part.
I call them non-negotiables. Like
Yeah,
there's
that's
certain
great.
things where you're like, perfect example. I mean, this is the first song that comes to mind, like Billie Jean. It's like
Yeah,
you have to know that bass line.
yeah,
But then there's another song where, like you said, it's more like figuring out the chord progression, and that's where I'm gonna circle back. Like I have charts sometimes, and I might write like Tommy Cogbill, and to me, humbly, I'm not saying I can play like Tommy, but that puts me in the headspace. Like, oh, here's the changes, and I'm gonna do
Oh, dude, I
my
mean, dude,
R&B thing.
that's brilliant. I mean, I think that a lot of times it's not discussed as much. Um, but I definitely reference players in my head. It's a lot. I mean, I think it's ridiculous that to say that this is. I mean, I hope people say don't do that. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Um, but one of the hardest gigs I ever had to learn last minute was the first time I played like a real dubbed reggae gig,
Yeah.
and it was with this band. This is such a long time ago. It was when I was still living in Atlanta. It was in my 20s. Um, but it was a band called the Rock Steady Review, and you have to play those verbatim. You can't. You have to play the exact line, and a lot of them. It's like dub and reggae is my favorite shit. Some of it, and having to learn it that quickly was very hard.
I bet.
They all start melding in together, and then it's just that was even doing like the crazy fusion stuff is not as hard to me as like that because there's still leeway with the fusion stuff because it's like, okay, well, this section is just blowing. I can do whatever I want as long as I get the heads down.
Yep.
I'm good. But for reggae, it's like you have to know the exact line, or it's not the song. It's like an entire night of Billie Jeans.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot. I mean, and you're trying to put all that to memory? Or are you like notating
Yeah.
stuff on the music
I'm just
staff?
not fast enough with a notation like that. I can write chord charts and numbers really easy, but it's just so weird to me. I can read pretty good, but writing it out, I just don't have the patience for
Yeah.
it. I never have been into that. Um, it's in certain passages, I think, and Chuck touched on this at the clinic he did was, you know, back in the day, if someone wrote a part that was too hard, he would just tell them like, this is, why did you write this?
That's awesome.
Because it's true. It's like I think sometimes people you can always tell when people write music and notate it when they're not really a bass player because it's like a bass player would not play that.
Yep. Yeah.
And when I was working with Fork all the time, because Henry and Chris, they wrote every part out. They wrote a song, and they already had the bass notated. And I used to butt heads with him about certain stuff. So I'm like, man, this is not bass player's song. What is this? And then when I write music, I try to keep it as simple as possible for other people. Because it's like if I'm writing a song and I hear voicings, I'll write them. But to me, it's like Henry Hayes is like one of the best piano players on the planet. I'd rather have him interpret it. And then some people like Henry rather just write everything verbatim.
Man, I saw, honestly, I think it was Chick's tune Spain, and it was like his original chart for it. And it was a major or a minor. That's it. There was no upper extensions or anything. It's just like B minor. And that's kind of cool. And then he's like, it's going to be up to the people to interpret what that B minor means.
I mean, I think that should be the case for everything. I tell people, if you send me notation like that, if it's under remote sessions or anything, like, save yourself some time. Because those upper extensions don't mean anything most of the time to me. I mean, you're gonna hear, like, you can hear a major or a minor, I hope, if you've been playing for a long time. And everything else is kind of your own interpretation because the root is always the number one fallback. So
I deal with that with some of my students that are learning more theory, and it could even be like they're playing in their church and it's a G sus chord, right? And then I'm saying, why are you playing a C? And they're like, because it says G sus4. I'm like, you got to play the G, man. The G, it's like the second you play that C, nobody's got the G anymore. And I don't want to be so finger pointy and strict, but there are things where it's like, that's the job, man. That's your assignment. We're providing that foundation.
It's also just not overthinking. It's like, I've become extremely anti theory now. Now,
Yeah.
I've studied it, but for years and years, the Krantz method. Once I really got heavy into that, it kind of adapted it towards bass. It kind of changed my own outlook of everything.
Wow.
Especially when you're playing, it's like there's not a lot of options anyway where you're at. I mean, it's like you have a major third, minor third, down an octave, up an octave, and you have a flat seven. A lot of times you're not going to play a major seven, even if you're playing a major chord into it, unless you're doing a passing tone. Yep. So it's like, I've just been breaking everything down into simple ways of looking at it instead of just overcomplicating it. Because again, commercial bass playing that we have to do, 90% of the time it's the same thing. It's the same diatonic movements. I'm just so against overthinking everything. It's just, and when I teach, it's a lot of people come to me because they want to start looking at different outside the box. And it's really going more inside the box by going so far out, you go in. So I'm just thinking so much. I mean, if I see some insane chord over in a tune, I'm like, okay, what's the melody note here?
Yep.
And that's, again, more likely I'm going to play the root anyway. So I want to move on. I want to be in the moment and play what I'm hearing with a strong foundation. That's my goal,
That's beautiful, man. What makes a good bassist?
Man, I mean, the number one thing is essentially their tone. I mean, that's, you know, that's every instrument. I mean, if you have a terrible sound, it doesn't matter what you're playing.
Mm, I love that.
Literally, you could be playing the bass shit, and you have terrible hands, or don't put effort into the getting good sound out of the instrument. Then it doesn't matter. It just sounds what it's going to sound like. Um, I think a lot of the guys that we love, all had the categories. They had the sense of tone and time and feel, and then it's the same. It goes back to Bruce Hampton. Bruce's whole thing was tone, time, touch, um, and the threat of vomit. And that's what makes the incredible bass players, and it's the threat of vomit is the danger. It's like what's going to happen, um, and that's not. It's kind of overlooked, but it's like all the guys. That's what you get. That's why you love Jamerson to Jocko to whoever. It's like they have this sense of like the threat of vomit. Like, what are they going to play?
Mm.
You but I think that, I mean, again, notice I didn't mention the word chops in there at all.
Yeah.
uh, chops, I mean, chops are extremely important to get certain things. I mean, I used to spend hours upon hours getting my chops together when I was younger. Which again, learning anything is not going to hurt you. Because even if it's bad, you can de-learn it. But just taking all information. But it's just funny it's like as an adult, if you're just still emphasizing on stuff that's not practical, then that's your opinion. But don't bitch about not working.
Mm. Amen.
It's like, I don't know why. It's like, well, maybe if you didn't, put so much time in this one aspect of the instrument, which is higher register, maybe, which is great. Again, it's like we all can do that. You can do that. I can do that. Most of our friends can do that. But if you're putting yourself out there only doing that, then don't get mad or jealous that your friends are getting more work when that's what you're putting out there. It's like
Absolutely.
talk about Tommy Cogbill instead of some modern internet bass player.
Yes.
You're in your 30s or 40s, and you're talking about an internet guy. Again, you can do what you want. There's no right or wrong, but it's like it's like if I only ate Wendy's cheeseburgers and then complained that I'm in the
You got
hospital.
diabetes.
It's like, well, you kind of did that. It's your decision, but,
Yeah.
I think the inept sense. Another thing with amazing bass players is that their sense of like knowing when to push and pull a band back. Even in recordings. There's a reason why Pino gets so much work. Because he's a diverse, brilliant bass player.
Yeah.
Same thing with LaFave. It's like he has this sense of danger. That's what you want. You got to have that. Has to be in your playing. You can't if it's the safe. None of the guys, even guys you would think were conservative bass players like Duck Dunn, they're playing as so meat and potatoes. It's still very dangerous what he's playing. It's not.
Well, you talk about attitude. I mean, that guy is like every note's got attitude. It's not a single. Yeah, it's just awesome. Man, that's really interesting. I'm gonna have to think about that because it's like I totally agree, and I think I have like a little manifesto for my own group, the Morel Trio, and one of the things is like, and I think the drummer said it, and I wrote it down. It's like, don't be afraid to take chances, and we're improvising a lot, but we also have there's like improvisation within a structure of a song that we've written, and then maybe the solo section might be 2 minutes. Sometimes it might be 20 seconds. Another time it's like where there's cues to get us out of these things. But what am I saying? Like, even as that band, we've been playing a lot more, and sometimes we get to the solo sections lately, like we played yesterday, and I'm just like playing some different, it's basically a B minor, but instead of just playing a B minor vamp, I started like just kind of suggesting some other, just basically getting away from the root note. And it's like, oh, that was cool. Well, that note didn't work as well. And I'm kind of thinking out loud here, Kevin, but yeah, I think to keep that, like a house cat that, you could just go outside and be feral within a day.
Well, that's what improvising should be.
Yeah.
I was very lucky to, play in Wayne's bands with Krantz's groups, and really eventually, after privately on my own studying his ideas, to actually get into work with him. And I think the big thing is what I learned from all these different experiences working with these people when it comes to improvising is that when you're playing through changes in particular, there's already a roadmap to play through. So one side of the brain is very daunting because it's like that's the feral part, the really creative part is like, man, this is structure, but to me, playing over a quote unquote B minor for a half hour and making it interesting and listenable is a lot tougher.
Yeah.
In my older years, because again, like as a kid, or when you're a younger player, you think that like a song like Giant Steps is this holy grail of creativity. And everything is to a certain extent, but I got into improvising for the freedom of what's going to happen in the moment, and I was just very lucky to run a jam session that was all improv for 14 years every week. So, I have made major fuck ups and sounded like shit in front of small audiences and big audiences, But I think when it comes to improvising with your group or playing over one chord, there's just endless variations in one chord where you start, and you have to just trust yourself and turn your brain off that certain side and say, I'm gonna play in B minor over here now. I'm in B minor, but I'm gonna start playing it in a position that I'm not comfortable with.
Exactly. Or I kind of visualize it like if B minor is the center, you have all these like little strings that you could go off, and it's like instead of necessarily starting right at home, it's like, man, I'm gonna start on a G sharp. What
No, but it's all but that's the fucked up thing about harmony. Is that
it's take you back to that note? Yeah,
exactly. And it's like you study it, and it's like harmony is like a piece of steel that goes to the center of the earth. Mm-hmm. You're not going to move the harmony. But rhythm and melody are endless variations. So it's like, eventually you have to start concentrating more on that than tell your brain. It's like harmony is what it is. You're not gonna. It's like, to me, melody and rhythm are far more important on bass.
That's beautiful.
I mean, what are you gonna do? Like, you're just gonna play? Okay, we're playing a song in G minor. You just walk up the scale on bass. It's like, that's lame. Well, you would not. It's like, oh, it's a C7 chord. It's like. Think of the rhythm variations of it. That's my whole position is less notes, more rhythm. Like it's because it's all relatable. So,
rhythm is king.
That's right.
Yeah. I'm gonna pause real quick for a little edit. I want to be mindful of your time, Kevin. So, we're about like an hour in. I got a bunch of questions, but we could pause and do like a part 2 another time, depending on everything else you got going on.
Yeah, I have this I got about an hour and a half on my.
Okay, beautiful. So, well, this will be edited in post. This little part right here.
Yeah.
This is awesome, dude. So, If you got some more time, I'm loving this, dude. I'm going to keep asking you questions. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
All right, beautiful. Um, can you describe a profound learning experience or hard lesson you've had? Could also be a gig horror story. Just something that, like, you know, made an impact that was maybe a tough lesson.
Man, there's so many of them. I mean, I am all, I think experience will outweigh belief any day. Um, I think a good balance is a must, but there's plenty of things when you're a kid about music that you have a belief about that when you get in the real world, you're like, whoa. I think the first time I worked with older guys and they were just not mean, but just suggested things and, you know, kind of, kind of beat the ego up a little bit. That was a big moment. Um, I mean, I was lucky to play with my dad growing up and him telling me, I remember one night I'm doing all my flashy stuff and I was like 16 or 15 and he was like, man, quit with the parlor tricks,
Oh, wow.
And that's a big thing because there's nothing wrong with parlor tricks if you're foundational. And that's basically, like the first time I remember when first gig Bernard Purdy hired me on, and I was in my 20s. We were having this rehearsal. It was me and Purdy and Reuben Wilson and Donald Harrison and Grant Green Jr. And of course, he had people at the rehearsal watching, and I was just sweating, freaking out. And I was nervously playing a lot of stuff. And he just hit the cracked snare drum and says, "Let it breathe."
Nice.
Um, in front of a bunch of people. When I worked with Russell Gunn, he was very honest on stage, which was cool. But I mean, the first time I ever showed up unprepared to a gig, and oh my God, that was the first and last time that ever happened. Where I bit off more than I could chew when I was younger, and kind of blew this one gig off and showed up very unprepared, and just the whole night just not having fun because I'm just, oh man, what is this? That was a big moment.
You can't hide as a bass player. It's like
Yeah.
if you don't know the song, you're screwed. I feel like a guitar player could kind of find the key and do like a little one note funky thing, or
They got it easy.
yeah, it's like if you don't know the
Guitar
song,
players got it all. It got it the easiest.
not only like know the song but the arrangement, right? Like
Yeah.
know what's coming. It's
And so I am not scared of fucking up. Like and it's gonna happen. I mean, God, I mean, even with the OR and Mule catalog, everybody fucks up nonstop. It's just what happens. I mean, I have fucked up Soul Shine before. I've played that song over 100 times, and sometimes you space out and mess up. It's like, um, so I'm not. I don't have like a weird fetish about not messing up, but not preparing is, you know, it's different.
how do you I'm going to do another left-hand turn here. How do you maintain focus? Sometimes like anybody, musician or not, has driven home from work and gotten to their house and not recalled the drive home. And then I tell people that happens when you're playing music. It's not a good thing. Like especially, man, when I was doing the wedding band stuff, I was so burnt out, and there'd be times where I'd be like, I don't remember what's happened the last 30 minutes, and I'm looking around, it's like nobody's giving me a dirty look. I guess I don't even know if I've been playing bass. But and that's I'm not like happy. That just happens. And so now I try to like recognize when my brain is drifting, or it's like, maybe there's somebody you're looking at in the audience, or I might be playing a bar and there's a football game on. And that was one time I had a guy tell me, I'm not paying you to watch football. And I was kind of like, sorry, I get it. And it's just a bar gig. But like, yeah, I'm just curious. You said Soul Shine, a song you've played more than 100 times, and it's like sometimes you just kind of wander. What are you doing to recenter?
Well, it's the road is so many factors, and people don't really understand it. You know, I mean, it's day to day. Some days I get good sleep, some days I don't.
Mm.
Um, it's then you're dealing with having to be on the road with a family, which has its own set of things happening. And I think that's one of the main things of why I would you lose concentration is because life stuff comes up, and that's always more important. But it's the recenter. It's I used to be really big into weightlifting, and that was a very good way of doing it. Even on the road, just getting an Uber, checking out a gym, getting away from the hotel or getting away from the venue. Um, at home, again, like I would always get really mad at band leaders that would get pissed about bar gigs. I'm like, man, we're playing at a sports bar for $100 a man here. If you're not trying to have fun, then I don't know what the point of being here is.
Mm.
It's what I'm saying. It's like okay, so you load in, you load out. You're there from say the gig starts at 9. You have to get there around 6 or 7 to eat, and then you're leaving the place at 3 or 2 in the morning. It's like, can we not just have fun? Like I'll watch football if I want to watch football. This is $100 gig.
Yeah.
And I'm side manning it. And again, I think that everybody needs to go through some of this shit. I did the Chitlin circuit, bottom Chitlin circuit, all throughout my 20s, even in my 30s, and to this day I still do gigs. That if it's with the right people, a fun bar gig, I'll go do it. But but going back to the question about the learning, it's like you just got to learn to play at your best ability at every gig.
Yeah.
You don't know who's going to show up. I mean, every gig I've ever gotten that's been cool is from essentially just a normal gig. Like the first time Bruce Hampton saw me play was in an Indian restaurant. First time the band that got me to move to Atlanta saw me was at a bar. First time Jimmy Herring saw me play was at a museum. It's like you can't just blow off the gig. But if a leader's being an asshole, then I got no time for that. Never had.
Mm. What's something you wish to improve upon?
Always, the thing, improving changes from decade to decade to me, And to me, I'm always in the constant pursuit of getting better and better at being myself and also being in the moment even more.
Mm.
Or it's like if I'm on stage, it's like not having the insecure thoughts and just being 100,000% myself at any given moment. That's what I'm working on now.
That's awesome.
And obviously working on bass lines and saying but a lot different. I think different decades when you start playing in your teens, you're trying to pursue certain things in your 20s and blah blah blah. But now it's about me just like making really honest decisions nonstop with my playing.
Who is sorry, stuttering. Who is an underrated or underappreciated bassist that you admire? And I remember I asked you this question personally, but I'm trying to remember what your answer was. I think I remember, but I'm curious. It's like just someone that doesn't get the roses. We've talked about obviously Chuck Rainey, Anthony Jackson. It's like who's somebody that's just not getting the love they deserve?
I mean, in general, all bass players.
There you go. Ding, ding, ding.
I mean, I recently was very honored to be a part of the Anthony Jackson Day in
Right.
New York, and it was at Shapeshifter, which is a great venue in Brooklyn that Matt Garrison owns. And but the whole time thinking like, this man should have a night at Carnegie Hall, you know, or electric bass is just not as particularly as a loved instrument still. I think it's still looked down upon um, a lot of upright bass players as well, like it always has been. But I don't think it's as talked about as publicly. But I think a guy like Anthony Jackson, to contribute how he contributed to music, should get the same accolades as a Paul Simon on paper, or somebody who have a Candy Honors or something. It should be for these guys,
Yeah.
but again, it's just not the case. Um, but so I say individually, then I think as a whole, all bass players are kind of overlooked. Um, but I mean, in terms of, guys that uh, I would say that comes to mind of guys who are in famous bands is Ben Shepherd from Soundgarden.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
That guy doesn't get considered. I remember one time I posted a picture of him. People were like, "Are you posting this because his strap is so low? Are you making fun of him?" Or I'm like, "No, like check." I think he's one of them.
Yeah.
I think that because all the session guys, it's like they're underappreciated just because it's the nature of the instruments. Like Tommy Cogbill, like who the fuck is talking about that guy?
Right.
It's even though he should, you know what I mean? I think I lump them all in one category,
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it.
because it's majority of the public would not. They would say, "Oh, do you like Respect by Aretha Franklin? I love that song." Tommy
That's Tommy.
Cogbill.
Yeah.
Who?
Right.
That's just the nature of the business. So,
A guy for me that I've been really geeking out on lately is another Nashville guy, Mike Leach, who
oh yeah, well, yeah, he was Tommy's
that exactly, and it's like
backup, or suppose like
they're on like Bobby Womack records where they're taking turns, and Mike's on a bunch of John Prine stuff, and
yeah,
I'm every once in a while there's like a great song that's just missed, that hasn't been on your radar, and for me it's this John Prine song Mexican Home, which I'd never heard that song somehow, and I heard it the other day, and I'm like, this is fantastic, and I just was listening to bass, I'm like, I bet you this is Mike Leach, and of course look it up, and it's like, yep, it's Mike Leach, and it's just a really like that guy had a way of playing like combining country and rhythm and blues, and it's like it's country, it's funky, it's grooving. Anyway, so that's kind of my current like, why don't people know this guy's name? But I agree, and then like, yeah, as a whole, the way the general listening public would know a Paul Simon or whoever, or they might know the guitarist in a band, but it's like the bass players just aren't. But we're like offensive linemen, man. We're getting the job done, and that's what it is.
yeah, we're definitely yeah. I tell people that bass players are the driver or the conductor of the car, or whatever vessel.
Yeah,
Drummer is the vessel, and everybody else kind of rides in the passenger seat or the back seat.
I like that.
And then you have the backseat drivers, of course, to tell us what to do. And even though it's like, I'm driving here, that's the way I look at it.
Yeah,
Certain drummers are Ferraris, certain drummers are beat up old Cadillacs, and some are just run down. These new transmission.
keys. Yeah.
We still got to drive.
I'm gonna skip a couple questions here because I want to ask you something that so on a personal note, I mean, I'm talking to Kevin, but to anybody listening, like Kevin is very important influence of mine, and we've become friends. And Kevin's been really encouraging of what I'm doing and giving me great advice. And I guess in like 2020, I reached out to you, Kevin, and just was like, man, I want to do a lesson. Like, and I just would like to talk and ask you some questions. And you were super generous with your time and gave me things that I think about all the time. And so I remember you told me that it's not like a vision board, but you said you had a list of people that you wanted to play with. And I'm kind of paraphrasing what you told me, but it was like, you need to like write down what it is that you're trying to do. And I just thought that was really cool. And, you've been crushing it the last few years and grinding for decades. And it's been really nice to see just all this like great stuff happening for you. And I'm curious, I mean, like, you've played with a tremendous amount of musicians. And I remember 5 years ago, you told me, like, I wrote a list. I don't know when you wrote that list. And back then, you're crossing people off the list, like Wayne Krantz and all this just incredible stuff. And so it's not really a question. It's more just like, I wanted to share that. I'm curious, how's that list looking these days, or sort of like what's the new list, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's this producer named Clay Harper told me that in my 20s. I mean, yeah, cutting my teeth in Atlanta at the time, and it was a different time period than it is now. It was, um, Atlanta is it's an underground scene. It's not an industry city like Nashville or LA. Um, Even New York to a certain extent. I mean, New York, I don't, it's not as much of an industry city as it used to be decades ago. But I would say just LA and Nashville are the places
Yeah.
where there's not, like in Nashville, for instance, like everybody has a gig. If it's not a full time gig on Broadway, you got a touring weekend gig, or or you're a session rat. I mean, it's just there's so much work going around. And in LA is very similar in that regard to me. Whereas Atlanta, it wasn't like that. I mean, I was lucky enough to get in the session scene when there was one, and that was brief in my life because all the studios closed, on the main studios. But my point is, I was very frustrated. When I was doing some work for Clay, and he said, "Man, just write down 10 people you want to work with and contact them.
Yeah.
You have nothing to lose." And I did it. And now, mind you, like the three people that I haven't worked with yet was Dan Lanois, um, Chad Blake, and Brian Eno, which I put, those three guys I've not worked with, but the rest of the list has been, crossed off.
That's incredible.
But it's funny when this is great. I was emailing back and forth with Wayne in my 20s, Krantz. And when we started working together, he answered these emails I sent him from when I was a kid that he never answered.
No way.
So he saw him, I was like, holy shit, I was wanting to get coffee with Wayne in my early 20s, And I remember even back then he did respond once. I'm going to be out of the country, but I would love to. But again, like, the way I look at it in that regard is you have to put yourself, the only person you really know in this world is yourself, and then you're a mirror, basically. So it's like, how would you treat somebody if a 20-year-old or however old said, "Man, I love your stuff. I love to work with you." Would you just blow them off?
Yeah.
You would say, "Sure, I would love to do that," or, "Hey, man, I'm busy, but let's get together." It's like I think again, we're all human beings, and again, some people that have the egos and are dickheads, you learn that quick. And there's been some people I've worked with in the past that they say don't meet your heroes, and I've not had a lot of cases of that, but I've probably had two where I was like, man, that was very disappointing. you know,
Yeah.
what a dickhead. But nowadays it's even more accessible. You know, you could literally find somebody, add them, send them a DM, wait to see what happens. You know, and because back then I had to email everybody. Um, same thing in my relationship with Tim LaFave, and Tim is the main reason that he got me on the radar of the New York guys by not living there. And that was from just again, he was on my list, and I was like, I'm gonna hit up Tim, and we started talking through Facebook. Um, so I can't emphasize that enough. Of just getting up the people you want to get up with, and hitting and just cold cocking them, saying, "Hey, my name is. I'm a really big fan of your work. I would love to work with you on this."
Yeah.
Or hey, if you ever need a bass player, or whatever, it's just the worst thing they can say is no. And that's temporary. Sometimes people, you never know, like, it's like, hey, I gotta fire my guy, or this guy's leaving. I wonder who that guy. I remember this guy. I mean, it's you gotta put him in your shoes. If I talk to everybody. But if you send me a message, um, I'm interested. You know, if you just want to talk bass, or if you're a musician, whatever. It's like I rarely don't talk. If someone hits me up, hit them right back.
Treat people the way you want to be treated.
Essentially, because you're a mirror.
Yeah, I like that. Amazing. Well, Kevin, this has been incredible, man.
We can do some more questions if you want. We got a few more minutes.
All right. I mean, man, you've been hitting home runs. This is a question I'm always interested just to hear what people say. Or this is something I've always wanted to know about a bunch of bass players. And I want to word it correctly. Who is your favorite bass player that's not an obvious influence on your playing? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Oh man, that's a good question. Uh, Not obvious. Mark King.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, perfect.
Mark, uh, amazing songwriter, bass player, singer. Yeah, he's had a big influence on me. You wouldn't probably know that or hear it, but he's up there.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. What's something you're proud of? I mean, I feel like you've answered that question.
I think the one thing I'm proud of every day, the most thing I'm proud of, is that I can provide for myself and for my wife and my animals on playing music.
Yeah.
You know, that's really it. I mean, it's like I think we get lost in the rigmarole of the internet and accumains and awards and blah blah blah. But it's like at the end of the day, whether it be from touring, teaching, um, even having a part-time gig but still playing music, it's like at the end of the day, that's what I'm most proud of. It's
That's
just
awesome.
it's like I remember the first time, um, I put down payment on a car based on playing music. That's amazing. It's like, and you look at all the old cats from Chuck to whoever, they're working. Chuck Rainey thing he said about a million times at lunch and at the clinic was happy wife, happy kids, happy dogs. The reason why he wanted to work with Donnie and Quincy is because he had a lot of work.
Yeah.
Wasn't like this whole, man, if I get this gig, I can post about it. Well, the gigs, they make 3 million a day. You only make 100. That's fine. I can put. People think have value.
Right.
I think again, and we're always losing this shit now because of social media. That you can fake anything you want now.
Yep.
You can fake it until you make it to a certain degree, but that's not longevity. And I think that if you're a bassist or a drummer, or a guitar player, singer, and you make a living at what you love in any shape, way, or form, it doesn't have to be full time. But if you're happy, then that's what you have to be extremely proud of. Because, you know, there's always new gear to buy, there's always new tunes to learn, there's always a better gig or any, that's just what the brain does. The brain never shuts off. I mean, I, I'll catch myself. Now, this is how sick, how messed up the conditioning of the ego is. I'll be on tour with Warner Mule, doing like a remote session on the road, right? And then see something on Instagram of somebody going, "Man, I wish I was doing that."
Yeah. Wow.
But that's the ego. That's literally not even what I believe. But that's just the way you have to correct your brain, because it's jealousy and all that stuff is a human emotion that you have to get over. You know, because it's a never ending thing. It's like, for instance, um, you know, even if you look at gear, you have a bass amp, you have a 66p bass, but to me, I'm always searching for best sound. So it's like, now I have this ridiculous board where it's the Osiris filter into the capo, into a Noble out with two. It's like, because now, mind you, I think I have the best tone of my entire life.
Yeah.
That's going to change eventually because
Yep.
the ear changes, and so I think it's conquering, getting so caught up with like thinking you're worthless or not good based on comparing with the fake Instagram, YouTube shit. Is very important.
That's super real.
I've
Yeah.
always loved, I think you've always been such a real dude and such an amazing bass player. Um, and just that time of your life where you're posting a different group every day, that's like quality content because it's real. You're not editing all this stuff. You're literally saying, "All right, here's a drum loop. I'm going to do this in real time with no edits, and I'm going to put it out there.
Yeah.
I want to do it." And I think there needs to be more of that. I Another thing, I think people should give more credit where it's due and not be so fucking insecure. You know, I'll admit everything I steal and take every time. And I think there's I've found issues with people doing stuff, you know, things that I would consider very personal, and them doing it, and not giving me credit, and that
Yeah.
always piss me off, because it's like, okay, well, you think that's coming from me, but I stole it from this person, and I've told everybody that, and then it's like I see you, not you, but like the person doing it, not even listing like where they got the idea from is obvious. That's really infuriating to this day, because it's just insecurities, you know. I mean, the amount of the subconscious brain, the way it works with music and hearing stuff, they're like the stuff you were doing. Like, if I watch a video of you play, I don't have to sit here in my bass. It's something that you've done has come out of my playing because I'm seeing and hearing it, you know. And I think it's just a ridiculous concept now that it's like, you know, that you are claiming this, not you,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's. I mean, I think there's also certain things that get annoying where people mean well and they say certain comments or something, and you're like, God, I wish you wouldn't have said that. You don't mean harm, but that was a little wrong, or um, just not correct. But I mean, there's I'll put it. I don't want to name names, but there's a particular person out there that gets like 1 billion views, and there's a certain thing I do with ring mod solos that I essentially got influenced by Wayne, um, and that's my thing, you
Yeah.
know, and I took Wayne's concept and applied it to the way I would do it on bass, not the sub frequency, but the high end stuff. I mean, you've seen the videos of it.
Yeah.
There's a particular bass player out there that is very popular, and I saw a video of her doing it, and it was with absolutely no regard, even though it was this almost the exact same thing, which is flattering to a certain extent if there wasn't such a marginal difference of influence. You know, that's the big thing. Is I'm always under the impression of uplifting my friends and fellow bass players, and again, it's like I've something again, like if something comes up, I've recommended you for stuff before because I think that's the way we all kind of go together up because
Yeah.
it's not this whole like beat somebody down and then we're getting the reward. It's like if everybody in your circle's doing great, then everybody's doing great.
I think, man, I'm trying to like kind of have the wording. Social media is a dangerous, toxic place. Also, it's been helped kind of project a portion of my like job forward, which is great. What I'm
Of
trying to
course.
say is like, I think, I mean, you said like you could be like in Sweden, man, with like a dream gig, and but there's a part where you see a post, and it's like, oh, I kind of wish I was doing that. And I appreciate the honesty because I feel that all the time.
It's so messed up.
It's so weird. Or
It's
like
so weird.
it could be a local bar in Baltimore, and I'll see
I'm
like
saying.
my friends playing, and I'm like, why didn't I get called to do that? And then I'm like, I should just be happy that my friends are
But you
playing.
are happy. It's just
Yeah,
that's that part of the brain, and then I think once you come to the conclusion that everybody feels that way and I have control, you'll have longevity.
yeah,
Because it's not like some people were born with that not being projected. They're just born with having to conquer it.
mm,
Not born, but working on it. You know. I mean, dude, it's hilarious. I remember one time I was doing this, where I was in a week in Japan with Jimmy Herring with my wife. Like literally the greatest scenario ever. And I saw this cool gig in Atlanta, and I was like, man, in my mind, I was like, I wish I was down there. And then you have to go, what the fuck are you talking about? Enjoy the moment,
yeah.
And I think there needs to be more honesty like that we're talking about because everybody does it.
Mm,
And I think that some people get so caught up in it, eventually they start coming across as like the bitter guy you don't want to be around, or they just storm in with that sociopathic, narcissistic, like backhanded bullshit.
yeah,
And that's what we have to deal with when we get older. Is people, I know you've dealt with it, as much as I have, but there's a lot of backhanded compliments that people give you, which I would just wish they would just say, I don't like your playing or like you, but instead of saying something very backhanded.
Steve Martin and Martin Short have a great bit about that, and I'm trying to
Really?
remember. The it's like, Martin says something to Steve like, "It's amazing a man of your age is like still relevant," or like he says something like that. It's just they're just going back and forth, backhand.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, God, it's like it's just right. And I hear that I'm in a position now of just being able to laugh at it where I used to be a lot more combative, but
Mm,
I think it's just hilarious. Just when the older you get, the more backhanded shit you can receive. But you also have to view people that there's plenty of ding dongs that are on my ding dong list that the reason why I consider them that just because of their egos, just the absurdity of what they put out there, and uh, so it's weird because I'm so big into psychology and with Jung and even Eastern philosophy and um, that's how everybody's judgmental. I'm not judgmental on things that are surface but the deeper stuff I will still be judgy, which I still have to work on. But um, I just get amazed at some of the stuff I see people talk about or post, or how they carry themselves. And I was lucky with the Colonel Bruce boot camp where take what you do seriously, not yourself. Is I'm getting that tattooed on me, um, because God, it's just the depth, the dichotomy of us is that we provide an outlet and joy for people away from the rigmarole, away from all the horrible shit happening in the world, and an outlet, which is far more important than what people really realize on paper. But then on paper, we just push a piece of metal to a piece of wood.
Right.
It's like, man, get over yourself. And it's just ridiculous. Bach existed. It's like, so that's how I judge. That's how, again, I still need to be better about it, but that's really the only thing I judge people on. Is like how much of a ding dong you are.
Yeah.
Hopefully one day I won't even think about that. That's another thing. So I'm working on that too. Just
Beautiful.
you know.
Last question. What's next for you? You got a big run coming up with more than a run with Gov't Mule. It's a full on tour, right?
Yeah, we got this tour coming up end of the month into mid-September, then a few weeks off, then all of October for the most part.
Amazing.
Um, and then in between, then I'm doing all my local stuff. It's my weird free stuff, and this Wednesday is the last edition of my Psych Out, which I was doing in Atlanta with. I've been combining all these different Nashville people with New York and Atlanta folks up here at the East Side Bowl. My record label, Austin is kind of doing his own thing with it in Europe. He moved to Ireland with his family.
Wow.
So I'm taking over kind of the U.S. provisions of it, and we have about 12 releases I have to get out. I think around 12.
Is this 29th Street or am I way off?
Yeah, 29th Street Editions. We've kind of taken a hiatus just between my schedule and Austin's schedule, but I'm about to revamp it pretty hardcore soon. My main passion besides music is our animal sanctuary we have here with my wife, with the Vermin Sanctuary, which my wife is Kara is just an unbelievable rehabber, and I'm always learning from her in that department. But just getting that more and more off the ground, and Nashville's been treating us very well. And
is the sanctuary at your house, or you guys have a different location for all these animals that you're rescuing?
we have our enclosures here and in our garage.
Amazing.
And it's just been amazing to watch the transition, because we're doing it in Brooklyn in our apartment in our backyard there, and now we have this incredible amount of space.
That's awesome.
But that is a big main concern, and I'm still with the Titans, we're been kind of a hiatus, trying to get new material going with Zach. So I got that on the radar. I'm about to revamp King Baby again, since that needs to happen. So we all live back down south again. So I'm planning on doing that. What else?
King Baby's more of in the kind of R&B soul fashion tradition. Is that right?
Yeah, we did this great record years ago that no one heard, and life happened, and then you know how it is starting a band. It's like the second loss you take, it's like, man, it's hard to recoup from touring. But we plan on revamping that. Hopefully, doing a record. I'm still writing a bunch of random music for trios and stuff, and I got my stuff.
Put out your solo record.
That was my finest musical achievement, in my opinion, that I finally got that out. I got a trio record I got to put out. Just a bunch of. I'm still just moving. Yeah, I have to get a bunch of stuff out. I got so much stuff in the queue that needs to get put out there, so I can move to the next stuff. But I got my first addition of doing my Stuff tribute here in Nashville, which I'm excited about. 'Cause I want to start using some of these session guys who don't play out as much as
Yeah.
people in that band. Because it's such a perfect way to kind of like go improvise, but you have a structure. Um, that's really it. You know,
It's a
besides
lot. It's a
it's
lot to
a lot of
juggle.
stuff. Yeah, it is.
Man.
You know,
Yeah, Stuff. I wanted to talk about Stuff and Gordon Edwards because I don't even know how I found out about that band, but there was a period of time where I felt like I was I mean, ego or whatever, but I was like, nobody knows about this band. Like this is my like cool band. And then like in the early days of like the Mulan craze, and I think that's how I found you, like on Facebook. And then you had a Stuff shirt and I had a Stuff shirt, and I was like, honestly, I was like, this guy's cool. Like he knows about Stuff. And
it
then
still is like that though, man. Like nobody. No, I mean it's again, it's so crazy how when you get into something that you think should be more common with your friends and musicians,
yeah,
there is Stuff is a band that I do. It's like the same thing as the Meters.
yep,
I'm like, so wait a second. You don't know who they are, even playing music for 10 years? Like,
right,
how is that possible?
yep.
Um, yeah, that's one of the first times I ever saw a picture of you with a Stuff shirt, and I was like, well, this is my fucking kindred spirit.
I need to get new ones printed. Mine are like all ratty, and the lettering is like faded off. I have a navy one and a maroon one, but I want to find them online and get some fresh ones printed out.
I was making everybody wear black and white ones
Nice.
for my gig, but I don't know if I'm gonna do that up here or not. I got to come up with my own name of the project and just rip off the logo somehow, but
Just like Kevin Scott's or Kevin's Stuff or something like
Stuff
that.
or Stuffed or I don't know. Stuff's a
Or
little.
Stuff, that'd be cool.
I mean, that's got some weird sexual innuendos. I don't really. Get stuffed, you know.
Yeah.
It might work, but
Hmm.
you know, I think I discovered them because of my mom. Because my mom actually listened to them, which is crazy. But she spent her time in the. I mean, my mom was an amazing singer. She still is. Um, but she lived in New York in the early '80s.
She probably saw some performances.
So when I grew up, you know, like Steve Gadd and Purdy were the best drummers in the world. That's how I was raised. And
Of course.
um, the first time I heard Stuff, it just what a cool concept.
I mean, that the first track on the debut record, that's all you need to hear.
I mean, it's ridiculous. And then the Live in Montreux video, and when I saw that, eventually, it was all over.
I don't even know. I think I must have read like probably like a Chris Gesey article about Gordon Edwards or something.
Had to have been because Chris is the most important guy.
He is.
I mean, I tell him every time I talk to him, it's like, dude, without you, like people our age in particular, and young and older, if he wasn't around doing that work, we wouldn't know anything.
I know. I agree.
And
And
it's
guys,
like,
for anybody listening, Chris Gesey, who Kevin mentioned earlier, was like one of the main writers for Bass Player magazine in the glory days of that, and just an extensive amount of interviews and insight. And it must have been, I think it was like Gordon Edwards' like transcription of a Lennon tune. But then I'm like, oh, this guy's cool. And then I think he probably mentioned Stuff, and I'm just like looking at the name of the band. I'm like, Steve Gadd, Cornell Dupree, who's maybe my favorite guitar player. I was kind of sold at Steve Gadd and Cornell Dupree. It's like, oh, Richard T., like I've heard him, and Eric Gale, who I wasn't aware of, but of course these guys were playing on a ton of records. And then it's like a super group. You know what I mean? Why?
Yes, a supergroup playing music. You know, I mean, Chris. Back to Chris. I mean, it boggles the mind. You know, I'm talking about unsung. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like God. Like, if it wasn't for him or that magazine, but see, of all the other all the other editors were great, but see, Chris concentrated on the guys that we love.
Yeah.
Anthony, George, Gordon. I mean, just he always had his hand. And I actually go on eBay now and buy back issues.
Me too, dude.
And this particular one, hold on. This right here is, I've talked about this a bunch, and I was so in the moment of being at the Anthony Jackson thing and getting to play and all this crap that, Ron Carter was there, and this
Wow.
was a very controversial issue because it was basically them going, Chris and, mind you, Anthony and Ron are friends, but
Super opinionated and
yeah,
proud of what they've done.
and then kind of going in on each other about, about the electric versus the acoustic, and Anthony calling out Ron for being kind of, a dick to him, and but it's just interesting. It's an amazing article that he put together.
What year is that issue? It's probably like 90s, mid 90s or something. Or?
94 December, yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, so I could have gotten both to sign it at one time, which will never probably ever happen again. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I'm looking at this right now, and I still get giddy about having an issue of bass player in my hands.
Yeah, dude, I have a bunch. They're out of reach right now, but
It's crazy.
I bought. I don't. Honestly, Ed Friedland had done some really good stuff. Even in more, the past 15 years, there was an article called R&B Gold, and then there was like something like Blues You Can Use. And I actually wanted them like to teach like some students and stuff like that. And somebody has every year like 12, 13 issues for the like 20 years. And I didn't buy them all, but I bought like 2008 to, I don't know, 2017 or something. And then I would find ones where it was like there was like a Jesse Murphy interview. I mean, Jesse's a big influence of mine, and so I got like some back issues of that. And that particular issue's got a Bill Laswell interview, an Anthony Jackson interview when he was doing the Michelle Camilo trio stuff. And I bought it just for like a 1-page Jesse article, and I'm like, this is amazing. There's so much. Those issues in the 90s and early 2000s were just packed with information.
Yeah, and it was legit journalism.
Yep. Yeah.
And now it's like, you hear about people just going viral, and I don't know. I think it's very important to be able to cipher information, as in be aware of where it's coming from, and who's saying it.
Like a trusted source, which
Yeah.
Chris and the bass player crew definitely were.
And what you're doing as well, it's like you have incredible experience to spread to young or aspiring bass players. And I think there's a level of, and that guy getting called out, like a guitar player, that was amazing, that he really couldn't play. Who's that guy that got called out by the bass influencer, called out this guitar influencer?
Oh yeah.
Yes,
Danny Sapko calling out the Giacomo guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and man, everybody had their opinion about. I mean, the Giacomo guy, I never gave a shit about that stuff. I mean, I remember someone sent me a bill that I was like, "This is the worst thing I've ever seen." Anyway, so
Yeah.
I'm not gonna let it infect my brain, but and definitely he got called out, and so I don't know. Just I think that was an eye-opening thing for a lot of people. That
Right.
I'm glad it happened, because now I think more people are being a little bit more aware that some of these people are just full of shit.
There was something. The Giacomo guy never was my cup of tea, and I was always skeptical. Like sometimes I'd watch, like I'd see a video, or a friend would send one to me, and I'd be like, I'm not sure this is happening in live time, or
Yeah,
like it's the best is like Danny Sapko had him like, he's like, nice whammy bar, and he's like pretending to use a whammy bar, and there's no whammy bar, but you clearly hear it in the track, and it's like, I don't know, it's a bizarre time, and that's why, like, I don't know, playing real music with real people is so still meaningful, obviously. And
Well,
then, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, we're all. I think the good always outweighs the bad. And I will say this: that companies are going after players again.
Yeah.
You notice. I mean, I think I think it's going back the other way, um, as of late. It's good to see. I think it's because at the end of the day, we can talk about this. We'll call it, but I never started playing music to sell stuff, um, and I definitely realize my influence on gear. I think between me and Ian and Tim, I think a lot of people look at us for what to buy.
I agree.
But at the end of the day, it's like I'm not, and I can't speak for those other guys, but I am not going to receive stuff that I'm not going to totally put my heart behind. You know, um,
I've always known that about you, man. Like, there's never been, there is no question, or like, I got into the Jet for your stuff originally because you were checking it out and you're like, this stuff's awesome. I was like, okay, cool. I trust your opinion.
but my point is though, is like the people that are only selling gear. It's like,
Yeah.
God, I don't know if they realize it, but it's just, I don't know. I just couldn't imagine like my, your short time on this planet, short time even like be able to play music, and you're just gonna be remembered for selling guitars. It's like, it's just crazy to me.
That's not the, it's not the point, right?
I mean,
Or, you're in the wrong business.
right? Go make some real money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like there's some other places you could sell some things and actually make some money.
Yeah, you got that right.
Amazing. Well, Kevin, this has been fantastic, man. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me. I mean, I'm just glad you're are doing this because, I mean, God, me and you have had so many great conversations that have stuck with me. It's just nice that you're gonna put this out there.
We get to share it. Yeah. Well, man, thanks again. Like, truly, it's great to see you. It's great to catch up, and thanks for all your honesty and just answering these questions. And I'm grateful, and I'm sure other people that are going to listen to this are going to be.
I'm grateful we just got to catch up. So
yeah, just get to hang out a little bit, right?
It's been a while.
Yeah, truly. Well, man, let's talk more soon. And thank you for everything, and appreciate you, and safe travels, and beautiful music, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, you too, man. God bless.
All right, likewise. Thanks, Kevin. See you, buddy.
See ya.
Bye.
Well, how awesome was that? Thanks for tuning in. Kevin Scott, thank you for your time. It was amazing. And guys, please hit the like button, share with your friends. It does help. And the more we can, knowledge is power, all that kind of stuff. And Kevin shared a ton of knowledge. See you next time. Thanks.